I enjoyed it very much. What was your favorite part? Lasagna? The mac and cheese. I really loved, there was like a garlic bread there. It was like the round, the oval one. Ooh, that was right, the pesto kind of thing. Oh man, that was so good. Is it really? Well, I know where I'm going to be next week. It's so good. Thank you so much. And the weather is finally beautiful outside. Can we say amen to that? I mean, that is just so nice to be able to go outside and enjoy the sunshine. Well, we're going to be starting here our afternoon session. We have basically 3 sessions to go. The last one is more of a putting it all together, but there's 2 more teaching sessions. And the first one of which is going to be on this topic, establishing an intentional online presence. I'm going to be sharing with you some things that you can start to think about when you want to expand your footprint digitally and online. And some things to also think about. I'm also going to be sharing with you a lot of tools and practical things that you're going to need your phone for. So if you have a cell phone, I'm going to have some QR codes on the screen. That just means you could take out your camera app and zoom in, and when you see the barcode, something will pop up on your screen saying click here, and it'll take you to a website. And also, there's going to be in my section anyways, after every sort of mini subsection, I'll have reflection questions up there. So what I'd like for you to do is to make sure you take a photo of that slide where it has the reflection questions, because at the end, my goal is to have you split up again into groups like last night and discuss some of those questions. You probably won't get to all of it. This is one of those subjects where we could spend the next 7 days easy talking about digital ministry and online ministry. So what my goal is today is to just give you some things to reflect on and that you can take home to your churches, to your leadership teams, and that you can carry on the conversation. So I want to share as we begin just a little bit about our story. When I got to the Oregon conference, it was in 2020. It was shortly after Tim got there, right? Andy, you were there already for some time. But when Tim and I got there, it was right before COVID happened. And we had plans, folks. Let me show you the plans that we had. This is a picture of a glass board in our office that had all of the churches and all of the evangelists that we had lined up. And my schedule this one was an earlier one. I had all this filled out for the next 3 years. Which churches I was going to be partnering with to do reaping series and bridge events. I mean, we had it all laid out. What happened when COVID hit? I mean, everything just went out the window. And we had to retool because, evangelism doesn't stop because COVID happened. Evangelism keeps going. And so what we decided to do is we went online because we knew a lot of people are going to be there now. They're not going to be physically in church, and so we wanted to start something online. Here's a couple of things that we started. I held an online evangelistic series called God's Answers for a Global Crisis. That was a 16-part series, and then we had Courage to Face the Insurmountable, just trying to give value and hope to people who were suffering because of COVID. And then we had also the faith factor. One of the things we realized was that we needed to provide some content for churches in order to not only consume, but also to share with their communities. But there was one piece to that puzzle that was missing. And we actually came across or found out about it by accident. Because we were supposed to have a meeting. This was now in fall of 2021. We were going to have an online series with this gentleman named John Boston. Anybody know who John Boston is? He is the, the Associate Director of NADI, North American Division Evangelism Institute. And he came out, and we were going to go, and we were going to pre-record another series like we've always done and put it online. And what happened in the fall of 2021? Does anybody remember here in Oregon, the disaster? What happened? The forest fires? Were you affected by the forest fires? So we went back to the drawing board. We couldn't use the facilities. We couldn't use the studios. So what are we going to do for our online audience or for this online event? We had to pivot again, and instead of pre-recording the content like we've done and posting it online, this time we said we have to go live. We don't have a choice. We don't have time. So we went live. I tell you something, folks, we discovered something incredible. There was such an interaction in that online live group that we've never ever seen before. And it really opened for us a possibility, a door to say, this is what we're really looking for. We found more vulnerability and more real conversation, deep conversations, by going online and having people respond directly to what they were talking about. We also had John reading the comments as they were coming in live and addressing them right then and there in front of the camera. And it was really something that revolutionized the way we thought of online ministry, because going online is one thing. Posting your sermons every Sabbath is one thing. But it's a whole other thing to use that content and to create community around it. That was what was the big aha moment for us. One of the questions that we get a lot of when we talk about online ministry is, can online evangelism, can online ministry be effective? And I would like to ask Tim to just share with us some of the things that we have discovered along the way.
Sure. Thank you, Rob. Can you hear me? Very good. Yeah, so when you're doing a Sabbath morning church service, we often, especially pre-COVID, we prioritize the audience that is here in person. But during the COVID era, when there was no in-person audience, we had to make the online audience our priority. And so we did a lot of, as Rob was saying, we did a lot of engagement with people, and the speakers engaged the audience online, very much so. And you'll see how we did that. And this created a lot of vulnerability where when people were, in the comfort of their homes, on their computer or their mobile device, communicating and engaging on the chat during the live program, there was a lot more openness than we even see in meetings that we would do in person. And so, like Rob said, that was the big question of, can digital evangelism be effective? And we were on our journey to find the answer to that. And we were pleased to discover that not only is the answer yes, it can be effective, but in some ways it's even more effective. It can be even more effective than in-person evangelism. And one of the ways we found that to be the case is through the vulnerability that took place. So you'll see some comments here. The speakers would say things like, if you are needing help in your life, just type the word help in the chat, and then people would type that word help in the chat. Here is some of the interactions that we had with people. Dana said, please help me. And then Paul, who was the speaker for that series, was able to get on the chat. He did that afterwards, after the series was, that night's presentation was over. And he said, what kind of help would you like? He began to engage with them. Eden says, I definitely am alone. And then Tom, who used to be part of our team, he responded with some support there. Donna, this one broke my heart when I saw what she said. She says, trash, that's me. And she was just opening how she felt in that moment. And there you see people that were responding. Lynette and Joe, these are different church members that we have throughout the Oregon Conference territory. And then Paul, as the speaker, also commented with some support. So you can see the amount of connection that's happening, where here you have people from the community that are opening up and sharing where they're at in their spiritual journey. And then you have literally Seventh-day Adventist church members and leaders all throughout the Oregon Conference that were able to be part of this journey because it was online. When you go online, you're not restricted with those barriers, geographic barriers. Here's some more vulnerability taking place. Jan shares about a child that she lost. Dana shares that she tried to commit suicide last year. Ruth says, trying to find meaning after the death of my son. And Rebecca says, I feel very discouraged. You might recognize some of the names there that were responding to these community members. These are all pastors in the Oregon Conference that were responding. And so we were encouraged by that. We went online, and our pastors around the Oregon Conference were also going on and engaging with people in the comments and communicating with them. And this created a really powerful dynamic. People, pastors ministering to people right there in the chat. And we saw that people's hearts and lives were being touched and changed, transformed through this approach. And we began to get these comments coming in. Here, Jama says, I've been looking forward to this since it came up on my news feed on Facebook. I will be here every night. I can't thank you enough for having this series. Christina says, thank you so much. Your program is touching my heart. It's hard to believe that I still have pain from my childhood and my marriage. I'm 73 and it's still there even though I thought I was healed. So she's responding to some of the content that was being shared. In this series, Paul Conniff was the speaker, and he is a marriage and family therapist. And so he was able to speak to some of the issues that we struggle with in our families and in our homes. And she gave her address there. We were able to send her a prize. She was a prize winner that night. Teresa says, you have done so much already. I'm really thankful I saw this series. Katie says, thank you for this incredible program. It is a lifeline to grasp onto. Jama again says, thank you. I don't expect anyone to fix it, but nobody will listen. And Paul basically tells her that her story is worth being heard. And then she says, thank you. I got a sense of that tonight. I'm so glad this came up. I was meant to attend. I felt comfortable speaking my truth. I very much look forward to being part of every one of these meetings and also receiving your book. I was crying so hard that I had to go back and find out what the title of the book was. Just the words you both spoke about my comment meant more to me than you'll ever know. And so we were able to create this kind of interactivity where somebody from the audience would respond to what the speaker's saying. We would put it up on the screen for the speaker to read. He responds in real time to that person's comment, and that creates a lot of value for them. And then James, I love this story. He commented support. He actually texted us. We have a text message system that went along with this. We asked him how we can support him in his journey. And then later on, he text messages us and said, I have loved all the programs so far. My wife passed away from cancer last year in December. I would not have made it without Max Life. That was the platform we were using. God bless all you. I look forward to seeing some of you on Sabbath for baptism. And here's a picture of him being baptized. And this is actually a neat story where before COVID, this church actually reached out. They were really struggling. And they were even thinking about closing their doors. But through this online ministry, new life was being breathed into this church, and people have made decisions for baptism. So we praise the Lord for that. And then the last thing I'll share here is that when you go online, you're also able to reach people, even outside the territory that you're around where your church is. So we found that, of course, going online, our main focus being here in the Oregon Conference was the Oregon Conference territory, but people shared it with their friends or who shared it with their friends and their communities. That's how social media can work. And before you know it, we had people from all over watching. This is a young lady named Megan who we found out tuned into our meetings online, and she ended up making a decision for baptism. And here she was being baptized in Michigan, where she is from, and by being baptized by a pastor friend of mine, Pastor Phil there, baptizing her into the local church family there in Michigan. So we had her watching from Michigan. There's all sorts of stories like this we could tell you. Here is another young lady who was watching from Wisconsin, and she ended up making such a strong connection with our community that she really didn't have anybody else in her life. She was struggling with loneliness and isolation and depression. She had no friends in her life at all. And so she became a really meaningful part of our community. We ended up reaching out. I did some research, and I found the local pastor that lived close by her there in Wisconsin. And I reached out to him, and he ended up getting together with her. And so this is a photo they sent us where they got together at a park close to their community, and they got to get to know each other. And then a few months later, I received this photo where she was now coming to their church and becoming part of their family there. And you can see that they're even holding the pastor's daughter there. So anyway, it's just neat to see the community take place. That's one of the questions people have. Can online ministry go offline? Do we see that impacting the local church? And the answer is yes, you definitely can see that.
Thank you, Tim. You might be thinking, well, we go live with our sermons every week. Oh, thank you. How can we turn that into something meaningful? I'm going to be answering that question throughout my presentation today. But one of the things that I wanted to cover as well is just this question: why digital evangelism? I want to share with you some really interesting trends that are happening right now as a result of what we've been through for the past couple of years. This pastor by the name of Kerry Newhoff, he's a pastor in Canada, and he releases a list of disruptive church trends to watch out for at the beginning of every year in his podcast and his leadership blog. I want to share with you the top 3. He has a long list, but I want to share with you the top 3 that caught my attention between 2021 and 2022, especially now that we're in 2022. So here's the first one that he says. Look at that one, number 1. The majority of attenders may no longer be in the room. The majority of attenders may no longer be physically seated inside of a sanctuary. The average church has seen their reopen attendance after COVID at 36% of their previous levels. And folks, the reality is that we may never go back to 100%. It's just the world that we live in right now. Look at this. What does this chart tell you? Something that I love about this chart is Barna, of course, they do studies across the entire nation about church trends. And look at weekly church attendance. So physical weekly church attendance. I want you to see this because this is a very important chart to notice. Look at this. All the way back in 1993. It's been holding pretty steady until 2009. And then all of a sudden, it just starts tapering way off all the way to 2020. The reason this chart is important is because many people I hear saying, oh, COVID is the culprit. It's because of COVID that everybody's left the church and they're not coming back. Well, according to the studies that I've seen, according to the statistics, it's been a trend that has already been happening. And what I think COVID did was just accelerate it a little bit. And if you'd like to see, this is the chart according to generations, because some people may think, well, it's the younger generations that are leaving. No, this is across all generations. All generations. But with the decline of physical attendance, especially in church pews, in physical church buildings, somewhere that church attendance went skyrocketing is actually online. And now people have the option when they go online to choose which church service they're going to be a part of. They usually measure that based on the quality of the video or the quality of the message or a relationship with the speaker. But as physical attendance started to decline, virtual attendance started to increase. And everything kind of went online, right? When COVID hit. Shopping increased online. Ordering food went through the roof online. Buying things, fitness, school, everything kind of switched to online mode. But with this shift to a lot of things being online, more than we've ever seen in history, there was another problem that was beginning to rise. And I want to read to you another article. And this gentleman by the name of Benjamin Windle touches on what the problem is with everything going online. He says in an article entitled "Digital Church in a Lonely World, We Are Facing a Loneliness Epidemic." He says, teens 13 to 17-year-olds report spending an estimated 5.15 hours on screens per day, a number that increases to 6.7 hours per day among young adults ages 18 to 21. 3 in 5 Gen Z, so 60%, agree their generation spends too much time on screens. And look at number 3. For a generation that's the most connected than any time in history, 79% of this same generation says they are lonely. They're lonely. Even though they're online, they're lonely. Isn't that interesting? How can our church meet this need? How can your church create community online through what you do. Not just for the sake of posting something for content, but figuring out how you can use this content to meet the loneliness epidemic. How can you create community around that content? Number 2, in Carey Nieuwhof's top 3 list that I've chosen, content, he gives a hint into how we could do this. Content alone won't cut it. Community and connection will. There was a rush in 2020 to get everything online, and that was a very appropriate thing to do at that time. But as we headed into 2021, the mood around online content began to shift. People said that they were zoomed out. And that was, people were using Zoom for meetings almost every day. But what's really interesting, if you look at the Gen Z and the millennial demographic, they were not shying away in 2001 from going online. In fact, they were going more online. But you look at the things that they were consuming. They were flooding social media platforms that were not just centered around media consumption, but it was centered around media consumption and community building. Things like TikTok took off. Instagram took off because they introduced Instagram Reels, and the whole idea behind Instagram and Facebook and all of these social media platforms that went really high, not just because people were home on their phones, but because they can interact with people. You can hear people's stories. You can share your own. This is something that we realized back in 2020 with John Boss's series. We realized that we can no longer just take for granted that we can post things online and then kind of dust off our hands and say, well, we did online ministry. I'm trying to stretch you, and we're stretching ourselves too, to constantly think about how we can create that community online. Benjamin Weedle, later on in that same article, says, technology has given us a new way of life. It has amplified the deep need for real community and friendship. Are you listening to what he's saying? Look at that. And if the church embraces it, we can be a unique part of meeting this need. If not the church, who? I mean, isn't that what we're here for? To provide godly community, to tell young people that they are valued, that they have inherent value, that they don't have to do anything to achieve the grace that Jesus has to offer, that it's free? I mean, this is the stuff that they're hungering for. And so we as a church have an opportunity to do this. And it's not slowing down just because things started opening up. It's still very much there. So we have a tremendous opportunity as a church. Number 3 from Carey Nieuwhof's top 3, the final one, growing churches will innovate beyond the weekend services. And this is just something that I've been mentioning all along. Weekend services are incredibly important, don't get me wrong, both for practical reasons and also for theological ones as well. So those are very, very important. I'm just saying, let's stretch ourselves a little bit. Let's think, how can we meet the online community who is very much there and is very much thriving and growing and is very interested in community. And just focusing on a 1 hour or 2 hour service on Sabbath, we're missing 167 hours throughout the rest of the week. So just something to think about. Here are the reflection questions I mentioned. So take a picture of this one. There's 4 of them. When I split you up into groups, these are the questions I want you to touch on. Like I said, you might not get to all of them, but even at home with your leadership teams at your church, think about these questions. Question number 1, what can your church do to increase community online? Question number 2, what other church trends do you see on the rise? What are some trends you see online especially, and how can your church meet that? There might be other ones that I didn't even mention. Number 3, what opportunities are there in your church to meet the rising need of these trends? These are great conversations to have with your leadership team. So I want to explore number 1 a little bit further with you for the next little section. So, what can your church do to increase community online? How can your church be intentional about reaching people online and providing that community. First thing I want to talk about is choosing the right audience. Choosing the right audience. The first thing we need to do. It's important to know your audience if you want to be effective in providing content and value. So choosing the right audience, step number one is to define your ideal audience. In marketing, there's a saying that says one of the biggest mistakes that you can make in marketing is to try to reach everyone. Because in trying to reach everyone, you may miss out on everyone. And so you want to try to hone in or zero in on a specific person that you're trying to reach. Decide on, they call it a target audience, or in some circles they call it an avatar, so your target audience. This can be specific to a series that you're doing or an actual ministry that you're trying to do in your church. Or as a church in general, you could be known in the community as the church that reaches this kind of demographic or this type of person. Pastor Tim mentioned yesterday the church in the valley in Aldergrove. One of the things they realized when they did a community study, kind of like Percept, what we went through last night, is that there was a huge demographic of single moms in their area. So they got together as a team and said, how can we meet the need? How can we be known as the church in the community that reaches or ministers to single moms? How can we do that? Well, they started, as Tim mentioned last night, free oil changes for single moms. Then they started to buy cars, fix them up, and give them as gifts to single moms. How amazing is that? That church quickly became known as a church that is valued in the community. Why? Because they were specific about who they were trying to reach. They didn't just try to reach everybody. It's good to do that once in a while, but have a target audience that you're specifically trying to give value to. Here is an example of an avatar that Carey Nieuwhof uses, and I want you to see how specific he gets. So his team got together and wrote this. So this is exactly his avatar. A gifted individual, so this is Meet Devin. This is their target audience. Meet Devin, a gifted individual who knows he is capable of more than he currently has access to. He cares deeply about not wasting his potential as a leader and maximizing his life. However, Devin feels stuck, discouraged, and isolated in his early mid-career potential. A born optimist, he is starting to drag through the days, feeling overwhelmed by the tasks he is slipping into uncharacteristic negativity. He feels frustrated with his abilities to manage his team, his priorities, and his personal life. A naturally confident person, he's starting to get the nagging suspicion he isn't capable of growing more on his own. He realizes he needs help from someone wiser and a few years ahead of him. Devin is ready and willing to invest in whatever will get him to the next level in life and leadership. That is very specific. What if your church got together and decided who you were trying to reach? Maybe who you were trying to reach just for that year. It doesn't have to be forever. You decide as a church. What if you were so focused and you knew exactly who you were trying to reach, down to the car they drive, down to the places they like to eat, down to the places they like to go on vacation? How would that help you create intentional content online to meet a need? Not only that, I love what Carey Nieuwhof does. He takes this one step further, and I would love for you as church leaders to start thinking about this. This is what he does. After experiencing Carey Nieuwhof, after experiencing an online ministry at the Lebanon or Sweet Home or Albany or the Corvallis church, Devin becomes healthy, independent, capable, disciplined, confident, better friend, better human being, better husband, father. I mean, the list goes on and on. Have you ever asked yourself this question? And this is part of that journey to become intentional as a church in your community. Have you ever asked yourself as a church, what do people become? What do people experience as a result of meeting your church or whatever ministry you have for your community? What is it that you want them to walk away with? How is your ministry, how is your presence benefiting their lives? Number 2, So first, define your ideal audience. Number 2, speak to their pain points. We all have pain points. We all struggle with things. If you find out who your target audience is, the next step is to find out what makes them tick. What are their needs? What are the things that challenge them in life? How do you find that out? I'll give you a couple of ways that you can do that. Number 1, ask them. One of the ways that I've heard people do this really well is if, for instance, your target audience loves to spend time at Starbucks. You go to Starbucks and you wait right outside the Starbucks door. And if you see your target audience walking by, give them a $5 gift card and just ask them some questions. See if they don't answer your questions. What are some of the challenges that you have in your life? How can we meet that need? Just something simple like that. Asking them directly. There's a couple of other ways you can do that. You can ask them directly. You can take them out to lunch. I mean, what you want to do is you want to find your target audience and get the information from them. It's really basic, but sometimes I think there's a disconnect there because what we think will work is like, okay, we want to reach the community. We have a great health cooking program. We're going to go and put on a health cooking class for the community because we think that's what they need or that's what they want. How different is that approach from saying, who is our target audience? What do they want? And how can we meet that need? Do you see the difference? It's an approach. It's a difference of approach. It's centered around them instead of centered on us and what we think we want to offer them. And many times when we offer great cooking classes, great seminars, people don't come out. Well, maybe the seminar is great. It's just not scratching where people are itching. And that's the problem. That's the disconnect. I know I'm stretching some of you this afternoon, but after a meal, I know we're all a little tired, so I'm hoping this will kind of get you thinking at least in the right direction. There's a couple of other ways. Community surveys is one, and you know how this one works. Just card, knocking on doors, walking through shopping mall parking lots, just asking people just some questions. And then there is another one called online research. For this, this is a part where I'm going to give you a practical tool, so you need your phones ready for this. But this is actually what I used. You remember this morning during Sabbath school class, some of you were here for that, how to have spiritual conversations with secular people. A lot of the data that I got is actually from this website. It's called bestplaces.net. Bestplaces.net. What you do is when you go over to this website, you'll see it in a sec, the barcode. It's not there yet, but you're welcome to take pictures of it. That's fine. But what you do is when you go to this website, you type this in, and you type in the name of a city right there. And what that will do is, for instance, I just typed in Lebanon. You know, it gives you a star rating, gives you population, unemployed rate, median homing price, median income, median age, comfort index. Apparently in the summer, it's a 9.1. Well done, Lebanon. In the winter, not so good, 5.4. But you can see, this site has so many great insights. You really want to make note of this website. If you scroll down, you will see here on the left-hand side just a lot of resources. You can click on religion. You can click on, some of my favorites are rankings. I love rankings. It'll show you what your city is rated number 1 or number 3 in the whole nation for. Right here in this whole Willamette Valley is number 1 safest place in the nation for avoiding natural disasters. We did have the fires, though, so I don't know how that has. But out of the whole nation, they actually have a map breakdown of all the natural disasters that happen in the United States, and we're in a green zone right here. But I'm just saying, there's lots of interesting information right here. Religion, politics. Where's the politics one? Oh, politics and voting. You want to see how your city votes? There it is, right there. So, I'll show you just a quick one. I think this one's for Albany, but this shows you the religions based by your city compared to the Corvallis metro area, and then according to the state average across the the state of Oregon. So this is also a map based on religion, where the pockets are of religious circles. It's just a really neat. So here it is. This is the one. So if you have a phone and you have a camera, just zoom in. You don't need to take a picture of it. You can if you want, but you zoom in and something should pop up on your phone where you just click and it'll take you straight to the website. So that's one tool right there that I want to give you. I have a couple more, but this is a great one that I use all the time. So, ready to move on? It's not working. Are you sure? It's what? Oh, you know what? I'm not sure why that is. If it's disabled, then I encourage you just to go to Best Place. That's why I have the website on the bottom. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know why it was working before. Just go to bestplaces.net. Take a picture of that, and bestplaces.net is the best place to go for that. Okay, so I'm going to move on. We'll just skip the QR codes for now then. Next one is demographic data. Demographic data, just an example of this is Percept. This is what Pastor Tim shared with you, and each one of you, according to church, should have a binder full of information that you can mine to find out what your target audience's pain points are. And as a reminder, this quote, "We are to study the field carefully." That is very, very important that evangelism tells us. Ellen White in Evangelism, page 125. So who is your target audience? What is their pain points? Number 3, what happens to them when they experience your content? So these are the reflection questions. If you have your phones, take them out again and just take a picture of this slide, because this is one of the questions or one of the slides that you can talk about in your groups. Who is your target audience? What is their pain point? And what happens to them when they experience your content? All right, let's move on. Time is just absolutely flying, and this is, there's so much content here. It's so hard to cover everything, but I'll just keep plowing through. So, choosing the right platforms. Of course, when we talk about online ministry, there's a lot of platforms out there. So, how do you choose the right platform? Number 1, ask yourself, where is your audience? Where is your target audience? Where does your avatar like to spend their time? There's a number of social media platforms out there. Here's an example of a number of them. You want to take a picture of this screen because you will have a lot of information there that you can mine later. But I want you to look at purpose. This is Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok. Look at purpose. Look at the 3 biggest ones that promote actively community and relationships. Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. These 2, all of your young people are on Instagram or TikTok. I would say almost 100% of them are all on one of those 2 platforms. Facebook is still good for that, although the age category you can see is a little bit higher for Facebook. It's starting to go a little bit, away from us. But a lot of the young people are right here. So this means if your target audience is a young person and you know that they're suffering from loneliness, you would not produce content and post it on Facebook or on LinkedIn because you're missing your target audience. Your target audience is here. So these platforms are built to enhance community. So you have to start thinking about this. How do I pick what platform we're on? Well, you might be looking at that and say, I have no idea how TikTok works. Well, guess what? Your young people do. Get their help. And how amazing would they feel if all of a sudden you as a church leadership got your young people together and said, we want your help. You know what your generation needs. These are the demographics. Include them in your decision-making process. So that's one way to look at choosing the right platform. Another one is deciding what your gifts are. This is just to say that if you have a lot of people in your church that are gifted at video editing, try to do something like TikTok or YouTube. If you're really big into blogging and you like more writing, you have gifts in that area. If you have church members that are gifted, get a Twitter account. There is so many people on Twitter. I don't even know if Elon is going to finally buy it or not, or if he's going to let Trump back in, but who knows, right? But right now, Twitter is huge. So many people are using it. It's just a platform that your church can use to enhance your online footprint. Next, what is your goal? Are you trying to build trust? Are you trying to get baptisms? Are you trying to add value? Are you trying to get Bible study interest? Think about that as well. That will also help you choose the right platform. And finally, owned versus rented space. This is just a fancy word for saying there is on online media, there is something called owned space and rented space. Owned space is things like your website. You own the content that goes on your website. Social media, not so much. And here's the thing with social media. You want to be careful with it because you could end up building $1 million house on a digital volcano. And what I mean by that is that, what's the name of the owner of Facebook? Zuckerberg? Mark Zuckerberg, thank you. Just blanked there for a minute. He could wake up one morning and decide, we're going to change the algorithms for Facebook. And all of a sudden, everything you've been doing online, you're wondering why you're not getting any more people coming to your content. It's just because they can change the way the algorithms work, and all of a sudden you can gain a lot of followers and lose a lot of followers, so you got to be careful with that. What I would suggest is that you use rented space, all your social media platforms, with a call to action to point them back to your owned space. Things like your website. You see, this content can get really complicated really quick, so I want to stay away from that, but I hope you understand a little bit of what I'm trying to share with you. This is more of an introductory topic. I want to ask Tim, however, if you could share with us, we've decided to go with Facebook and Zoom. Why?
Yeah, so many different platforms have advantages, but we have been leaning into Facebook and Zoom because of the community that you can create there. Facebook offers a nice package from everything from the ads down to event pages that your ads can point people to actually going live on Facebook, and then all the way down to the chat experience you can have with people during your live video, to them watching it afterwards, and also even just details such as when people comment on your live video, Facebook will give you the option just with one click or tap, you can message them privately. So we did that a lot with our meetings where we would say, hey, if you need help, just type the word help in the chat. And then as people did that, we could just click on each comment that says help. We could just click or tap a little link that says, send a message privately. And immediately we're now having a personal, private conversation with those people, asking them, hey, how do you need help? Can you tell us more about what's going on in your life? And we were able to have a lot of really meaningful conversations taking place one-on-one. We did a lot of coaching and that kind of a thing, and really some powerful connections came out of that. So, and then Zoom we also used for follow-up after our meetings, where it allowed us to go deeper with people, where now we're not just seeing their profile photo and their name, but we're actually seeing their face and hearing their voice over Zoom. And so it allowed more of an intimate connection to start taking place with those individuals. So these are kind of the paths that we found a lot of success with, but we are always exploring other options, and we encourage you to do that too.
Absolutely. So here are the reflection questions. Take a picture of this slide. Where is your audience? Where is your audience? Number 2, what are your gifts as a church? And number 3, what is your goal? What are you trying to accomplish with your online ministry? These are great questions to think about. Lastly, we're going to talk about choosing the right content. The first thing to consider when choosing so you have a target audience, you know where they're hanging out, but now you need to know what to post, how to engage with them, what content to post. Number 1, question to ask: how deep is your content well? You don't want to start an online ministry or start a ministry for young people on something that you post like 2 or 3 times and you're out of ideas. You want to make sure that it's something that you have a lot of ideas. An exercise that I would suggest for you and your leadership team is to write down across the top of a page like 5 major themes that you think your target audience needs to know about or what their pain points are. And then underneath the 5 major themes, write as many pieces of content that you think you can produce or provide for under that theme. Questions, content, series, weekend sermons, anything like that under each one, and see which one of those themes, be very specific, which one of those themes has the largest amount of information. That's your content well. That means you can draw from that well many, many times, and you have always content to produce, to give to your online audience. Another thing is consider your audience's POV. What does POV stand for? Anybody know? Point of view. Consider your audience's point of view. This is one of the most important steps when you're doing online ministry. One of the tools that I want to share with you that has helped me tremendously when it comes to this, because you want to know, what is my audience looking for? How do I know? Google is a search engine, right? How do I tap into the power of Google to find out what people are searching for on any given topic? Here is the best site for that, right here. Answerthepublic.com. I have the QR code, but if it doesn't work, then at least take a picture of that. What I love about this website is that little robot is animated. It's kind of neat. Sometimes they have different videos playing in the background. That's not the point. Here, you put in a topic. Let's say you want to have a series on tomatoes. You want to do something around tomatoes. You put tomatoes in there, and this is what you get. A lot of flowers. Looks like flowers. But this is a powerful tool. It mines all of Google. Every search that everything that people are searching for on this topic, tomatoes. And every single one of these, you don't see those words very well, but these are all prepositions. What, are, who, why, when, which, where, and can. So I want to zoom in here just to show you an example of what this is going to show you. Will tomatoes raise blood sugar? Will tomatoes cross-pollinate? Will tomatoes hurt dogs? And so on and so on. You want to find out what people are searching for on a topic that you want to present? Go to this website. It will tell you what they're looking for. And all of a sudden, you have a much clearer idea of what kind of content or what kind of answers you need to be answering. The guesswork is taken out of it. So if you have a team that can mine this data and come, friends, this gets me excited. I got to calm down. Anyways, okay, so the QR code doesn't really, I don't know why this isn't working anymore. This is, one second, folks. Cancel. I don't know why I didn't touch it. There we go. That's the QR code. So let's move on. How deep is your content? Well, this is choosing the right content. Consider your audience's point of view, and then hook your audience. Once you know the questions that they're asking, going to answerthepublic.com, you know what they're already searching for. Come up with content with a really powerful headliner. Hook them with a question, with a statement that they're going to be like, I'm interested in this. I want to click on this. I want to find out more. How do you do that? Identify, number one, the WIFM. What does WIFM stand for? Yes, somebody knows. What's in it? I wish I had a prize for you, but what's in it for me? Everything you do, from buying a car to going on a vacation to making the biggest decisions or the smallest decisions in your life, most of them, you're going to be asking yourself this question: what's in it for me? Considering your audience's point of view, ask yourself, if I'm going to be putting this content online, what's in it for the viewer? Put yourself in their shoes. What's in it for me? Why am I going to watch this right now? How is this answering any sort of my pain points? Use that to write a great hook for your audience. Ask yourself, what will my audience accomplish from this engagement? What will they miss out on if they don't engage? Those are two powerful questions. Next one, use a good headline. This I'm going to share with you another tool for. It's this one here. You need a picture for this one. It's not as easy to remember. coschedule.com/headline analyzer. It's a free tool. This is so powerful. Folks, if you walk away with just these these tools that I'm giving you, you are miles ahead in your online ministry. And this even translates to in-person ministry as well. So what this does is, let's say you know your target audience, you know their pain point, you know what they're asking, and now you want to hook them. You want to write a good headline for your article or for your video. You know, on YouTube they have the titles, and most of the time you read them, you're like, oh, that's interesting, or you just scroll past because you're not interested. How do you know what's a good headline or a good headline for whatever piece of content that you're producing? Go to this website, type in the headline, and it will give you results based on several categories. They will give you a mood indicator. They will give you a score, and if it's a green smiley face, you've nailed it. That is a headline people will click on. If it's red, keep going. keep coming back to the drawing board. Come up with a strong headline. This works, John, and any pastors here. Daniel Bates is here. I don't know if any other pastors are here, but this is great for, Tim, great for your sermons or for your sermon series. Type it in here, just run it, see what score you get, and it'll actually advise you on how you can make it more attractive, hook people, like, ooh, I really want to come to church this Sabbath. I want to find out what the pastor has to say on this topic. It's a great topic. So just a free tool there for you. This is the QR code, but moving on. And of course, use the word you. Remember, it's more about them than you. You want to add as much value as possible to people's lives. And that starts by putting yourself in their shoes. Okay. Last one. Oh, yes. Add value to them. So there's a rule that we follow in online ministry called the 10-to-1 rule. And it's simple. For every 10 pieces of content that you post online, 9 of them should be adding value to people's lives. And 1 should be an invitation. Did you get that? That is very important. Because what is most of our online announcements like? It's like bulletin boards. Come and join us for this. We're having this. You don't want to miss that. Online ministry should be different. 9 times out of 10, you should be adding value to people's lives. This is what Jesus thinks about you. This is how you can make it through your tough time. Add value, value, value. And then 1 time out of 10 say, look, we know you're struggling. On Friday night, we're going to have a meeting at the church. We're going to have food. And we'd love for you to come and meet people who are just like you in your same situation. Come and hear how people got through their financial troubles. I mean, isn't that different than just saying, yeah, we have a financial seminar, come at this time and this day, and try to add value to people's lives before you make an invitation. I think you got the point. So here are the reflection questions. Take a picture of that. That's the last one. Ask what questions is your audience asking? And number 2, how do you want your audience to feel when they see your content? Folks, I know what it's like. We have announcements. We want to tell people what's going on. But one thing we don't want, I think you'd agree with me, we don't want people to see our content and automatically be exhausted, like, oh, this is another event. We want people, when they see our brand, when they see your church's brand, to say, wow, I'm clicking on this because I know 9 times out of 10, they're adding value to my life. And so an invitation becomes so much easier after that. I just mentioned a word. It's called branding. And we have a couple minutes here. I'm wondering if, Tim, you could share with us a little bit more on that topic.
Yeah, so the topic of branding is basically the question of how do you want to represent yourself to your community, to your target audience. And so, of course, in the context of local church ministry, the big question is, are you going to be using your own church's brand, the name of your church, or are you going to come up with maybe a more secular-friendly brand? So those are some options for you. So here are a few branding principles. Number 1, you want to decide if you want to use an existing brand, such as the Corvallis Seventh-day Adventist Church, or whatever the brand is that your church name is. Maybe you already have an online presence with your current church's brand. Or if you want to create a new brand. And sometimes there is value in creating a more secular-friendly, neutral kind of a brand that you use to connect with people. There are pros and cons to using your church's name as your brand. The pro is that people get familiar with you from the get-go as a church. The con or the disadvantage is sometimes people might be put off by it if they know immediately this is a church thing. So having a neutral brand can be a way to connect with people without that immediate church barrier that you put up there. So something for you to think about. If you do choose to use a different brand, come up with some neutral name or whatnot, you want to research available options and consider your SEO implications. So SEO is search engine optimization. You want to do your market research and figure out, is there another organization or another group that's already using that name? And if somebody searches for that name, are you going to be competing with other brands out there? Of course, you want to get your website domain, select your color theme. So these are just some different ideas for you. We don't have a whole lot of time to go into this in detail. But think about your logo for your church or for the brand you're using. We want it to be attractive, convey a meaningful message, be professional, clean, and simple. You may need to consider using a graphic designer. It's always great if you have somebody in the congregation that has that talent and skill, but don't limit yourself to that. It's worth it to hire or pay a good designer to make sure that your brand can be represented well to the community. So this is a brand that we've been sharing with you, one that we've come up with, Evangelive, every church, every member. Again, you see how that's clean, it's simple, it's meaningful, it has a clear message, it's attractive, and it's it's not too much. So this is another tool, as Rob was sharing you some tools. This is another one. It's called coolers.co. So it's kind of like colors, but with 2 O's there. And what this does is it allows you to explore different color themes where you can, you go to that website, you hit the space bar, and it will generate new colors. And once you find a color you like, you can just lock it in with that little lock symbol there, and then you can keep hitting the space bar, and it will help you find other colors that complement the color or colors that you've already locked in. So it's a nice way to find color themes for your brand that look really nice. And I share this because sometimes I don't want to step on anyone's toes here, but sometimes I've seen church-related brands and color themes that aren't very attractive. And we need to get with the times, right? We need to know how to represent ourselves well to our communities. And so we do need to look at branding. How can we have a clean and professional brand to represent Jesus well to the community? And then, you can also click a certain color if you want to see other shades of that color. So there's just different tools like that on there for you to consider.
You can go to the next slide. So at this time, we're just going to take about 5 to 10 minutes. What I'd like for you to do is just to get into your groups, look at the photos that you took of the reflection questions, and maybe start looking at 1 or 2 of them and just have an open discussion among your group at this time. And we'll be back with Andy's presentation in about 5 to 10 minutes. We'll just call it when we're ready.